By the end of that week, something quietly unprecedented happened inside the British monarchy, something that would send shockwaves through the halls of Buckingham Palace long before the public ever noticed a thing. The Queen Consort appeared at a major public reception completely bareheaded. No tiara, no crown, just a sapphire necklace and a composed smile. To the millions watching on television, it looked like a modern fashion statement, a moment of elegant restraint. Commentators praised her less is more approach. But inside the palace walls, no one was talking about fashion. They were talking about a crisis. You see, in royal life, a tiara is never just an accessory. It is a signal. It announces hierarchy, authority, and permission. When a senior royal steps out at a formal evening engagement without one, it is never accidental. It is a distress flare. It means something has gone wrong behind the scenes, something serious enough that even the most senior palace staff were instructed to keep their mouths shut. But silence in the palace is never empty. It's heavy. And what the public didn't know was that this missing tiara was the final casualty of a brutal power struggle that had taken place only days prior. A struggle that left the Princess of Wales isolated, humiliated, and stripped of her most symbolic possessions. To understand why this happened, we have to look at the 72 hours leading up to that night. Buckingham Palace had transformed from a residence into a command center. The royal household was preparing for two high-profile events scheduled dangerously close together: a prestigious literary reception hosted by the Queen Consort herself and the king's official birthday appearance. Both events demanded absolute flawlessness. Both carried massive symbolic weight, and both were being micromanaged by the Queen Consort. Reports from inside the household describe an atmosphere that was tightly wound. The Queen Consort had taken direct control of preparations, lighting guest lists, decor, exercising her authority in a way that left zero room for error. But there was one problem that refused to resolve itself: the wardrobe. Specifically, the tiara. As final fittings approached, frustration began to mount. None of the pieces typically assigned to the Queen Consort seemed to work. Some clashed with the custom gowns. Others felt too heavy or outdated. A few were simply unavailable due to restoration. In any other household, this would be a minor annoyance. But here, it became a flashpoint. As the clock ticked down, the Queen Consort's attention shifted away from the vault's general collection and turned toward a specific set of jewels, ones that were not technically hers to command. She set her sights on the collection held by the Princess of Wales. Kate possessed several tiaras known for their balance and symbolic restraint, specifically the Oriental Cirlet, a refined, powerful piece that communicated legitimacy without demanding attention. It was exactly what the Queen Consort wanted. And in her mind, what the crown wants, the crown gets. The first warning shot wasn't fired in a meeting room or through an official email. It happened in the semi-darkness of a palace corridor late in the evening. The Princess of Wales had just finished reviewing her schedule with her private secretary, preparing for her own role in the upcoming events. Her wardrobe was set, her jewelry logged and assigned. She had spent years cultivating a visual image based on consistency and respect. As she stepped into the hallway expecting the usual quiet of the royal night, she found herself blocked. The Queen Consort was waiting. There were no aides present, no witnesses to soften the interaction. It was a deliberate ambush. According to insiders, the Queen Consort didn't waste time with pleasantries. She cut straight to the point. "I hear you have the Oriental Cirlet available." The words were delivered with a measured, icy calm. For a second, the Princess of Wales thought she had misunderstood. Tiaras are matters of state protocol, requested through formal channels, not demanded in hallways like borrowed scarves. Kate tried to deflect, responding with her usual poise. "I was planning to wear it myself," she explained. "My wardrobe has already been arranged around it." There was no defiance in her tone, only facts. But facts were not what the Queen Consort was interested in. Her expression tightened. "You have other pieces," she snapped. "You do not need that one." When Kate gently pushed back, mentioning that the choice was symbolic, the dynamic shifted from negotiation to hostility. The Queen Consort stepped closer, dropping the veneer of civility entirely. "Why are you always trying to draw attention?" she accused. "Do not forget who I am. You should know your place." If the story ended there, it would just be another rumor of royal friction. But it didn't end there. The Princess of Wales walked away from that encounter assuming that while unpleasant, the matter would be handled with the usual discretion. She was wrong. The silence that followed wasn't a resolution. It was the calm before a tactical strike. By the next morning, the Queen Consort made a move that would stun the oldest members of the household. Just before midday, her personal security officer, accompanied by a senior designer, arrived at the royal jewelry vault. This was an unscheduled visit. The officer in charge of the vault, a man whose entire career was built on protecting these assets, attempted to intervene. "May I ask who authorized this?" he asked. The answer was sharp and final. "We are acting on the Queen Consort's instruction." When the vault manager hesitated, noting that the requested items were assigned to the Princess of Wales and required her release, he was met with a line that shattered protocol. "The Princess of Wales is not the Queen." In that moment, the hierarchy was weaponized. The vault was opened, but they didn't just take the Oriental Cirlet. As if to prove a point, the team proceeded to remove the Cambridge Lover's Knot Diana's signature tiara and the lotus flower tiara. They cleared the shelf. This wasn't about finding a matching accessory anymore. It was a raid. It was a demonstration of absolute dominance designed to leave the Princess of Wales with nothing. The news traveled to Kate in the worst way possible quietly through a devastatingly apologetic report from the head of the vault. When he explained that all 3 tiaras had been removed without her authorization, the color drained from the room. Kate, who had spent over a decade perfecting the art of keep calm and carry on, sat in stunned silence. This wasn't just petty theft. It was erasure. It was a message that her status, her history, and her choices could be overruled on a whim. But even the most disciplined royal has a breaking point. An hour later, Kate walked to the Queen Consort's private office. She didn't wait to be announced. Inside the room was buzzing with staff dressers and designers. When Kate entered, the air left the room. She asked with a steady voice why her tiaras were taken without permission. Camilla didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. "I took what was needed," she replied coolly in front of the entire staff. "Because you were behaving as though you were already queen." The humiliation was public and intentional. Kate stood her ground, stating, "This is not about power. It is about boundaries." Camilla simply laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that echoed off the walls. "You are mistaken," she said, leaning back in her chair. "It is always about power." In that office, surrounded by silent witnesses, the mask of a happy blended family didn't just slip, it shattered. Kate left the room trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the disrespect. As night fell, the situation twisted into something even darker. A loyal aide knocked on Kate's door with information that changed the context of the entire theft. The aide had overheard a discussion among the wardrobe team regarding the lotus flower tiara, one of the delicate pieces taken in the raid. It turned out this tiara wasn't being prepped for the Queen Consort. It wasn't even being prepped for a working royal. The whisper was that the tiara was intended for the Queen Consort's granddaughter, a non-royal, for a private appearance. If the previous events were a slap in the face, this was a dagger. In the strict world of the monarchy, tiaras are reserved for those with a title, a duty, and a role within the institution. To loan a historic royal heirloom to a family member with no official standing simply because you can is a violation of custom so deep it borders on sacrilege. It meant the tiaras weren't taken because they were needed. They were taken to show Kate that she could be bypassed for literally anyone Camilla chose. The need was a lie. The insult was the point. The following days were a study in psychological isolation. The palace, usually a bustling hive, felt cold and distinctively hostile toward the Wales household. Kate had to navigate this minefield alone. Prince William was away on official business, and his absence felt like a physical weight. Every meal with the children became a performance. She smiled for George, listened to Charlotte, and laughed with Louis, all while carrying the secret that she was currently being erased by the head of the family. The staff sensed the shift. Corridors cleared when she walked down them. Eyes were averted. It was the royal freeze-out, a tactic as old as the castle itself. Kate waited for William, hoping for an early return, but a phone call confirmed he was stuck on schedule. She had to hold the line alone. She had to endure the sight of preparations continuing, knowing her symbolic armor had been stripped away and handed out like party favors. It was a test of endurance designed to see if she would crack. She didn't, but the damage was being done internally. The breaking point and the turning point finally arrived with the sound of footsteps in the hallway. William returned just as dawn was breaking. The children rushed him, the noise of their joy temporarily breaking the suffocating tension of the palace. Kate watched from a distance, the relief washing over her so intensely it almost brought her to her knees. But she waited. She let the children have their moment. She let the house settle. It wasn't until late that evening, behind the closed doors of their private quarters, that the truth came out. William, sensing the shadow over his wife, asked simply, "You do not look all right." That was all it took. The dam broke. Kate sat him down and detailed everything: the ambush in the corridor, the know your place comment, the raid on the vault, and finally the revelation about the granddaughter and the lotus flower tiara. As she spoke, William didn't interrupt. He sat in absolute stillness, but his expression darkened with every sentence. When she explained that the tiaras were taken not for duty but for personal leverage, William's jaw tightened. "That is unacceptable," he said, his voice low and vibrating with suppressed fury. Kate looked at him and admitted the hardest part. It wasn't just about authority, William. It felt like being erased. The morning after William's return, the silence in the palace didn't just break, it shattered. Prince William is known for his temper, a trait inherited from his father, but sharpened by the protective instincts of his mother. He didn't wait for a scheduled appointment. He didn't wait for the king's private secretary to clear a slot. He walked straight to the king's private study, bypassing the usual layers of protocol that keep the monarch insulated from family friction. Inside that room, the conversation was reportedly one of the most heated the father and son have had in years. William didn't waste time with pleasantries. He laid out the facts: the corridor ambush, the unauthorized raid on the vault, and the ultimate insult, the plan to loan a royal heirloom to a non-royal grandchild. This wasn't just a complaint about his wife's feelings. William framed it as a constitutional risk. If the hierarchy is dissolved for personal favors, he allegedly told the king, then the institution dissolves with it. But the real leverage came next. William delivered an ultimatum that left the king with no room to maneuver. He made it clear that if the Queen Consort appeared at the reception wearing the lover's knot, or the Oriental Cirlet pieces synonymous with the Princess of Wales and the late Princess Diana, then the Prince and Princess of Wales would not be in attendance. It was a nuclear option. A royal boycott of a major state event would trigger a media firestorm that the king, still cementing his reign, simply could not afford. The choice was brutal but simple: his wife's vanity or his heir's loyalty. King Charles, caught between the two factions, made the only decision a monarch could make. He chose survival. But he couldn't simply ask Camilla to return the jewelry. That would be an admission of guilt. Instead, he had to frame it as a command. Sources say the meeting between the king and Queen Consort was short and icy. The king informed her that wearing the stolen tiaras was imprudent given the current climate. He reportedly cited optical concerns and the need to avoid drawing comparisons to Diana at such a sensitive time. It was a diplomatic way of saying, "You went too far." Camilla argued that the tiaras were already in her possession, that the gowns had been altered, that the modern look would be criticized. But the king stood firm. The order was absolute: no tiara tonight. This is where the official narrative was born. The palace press office was instructed to spin the decision as a deliberate stylistic choice, a modern pared-back aesthetic for a new era. But inside the dressing rooms, it was chaos. The Queen Consort was left with a collection of world-class jewels sitting on her vanity that she was physically forbidden from touching. The modern look wasn't a fashion statement. It was a punishment. It was the visual evidence of her defeat. When the doors to the reception finally opened, the atmosphere was thick enough to choke on. The guests, ambassadors, literary giants, and aristocrats saw only the glitter of the event. But for the inner circle, the tension was visible in every glance. The Queen Consort entered the room. As predicted, she was bareheaded. To the uninitiated, she looked regal, perhaps a bit austere. But to the Princess of Wales, who stood across the room, that bare head screamed volumes. It was a symbol of a battle fought and won in the shadows. Camilla moved through the crowd with a fixed smile, but insiders noted she avoided the Wales couple entirely. There were no warm greetings, no shared laughs for the cameras, just a cold, hard distance. And then there was Kate. She didn't need a tiara to make her point. She wore her assigned jewelry, the pieces that hadn't been rated, with a terrifyingly calm confidence. She engaged with guests, laughed easily, and held the center of the room without trying. It was a masterclass in soft power. She didn't have to say a word about the theft or the drama. Her presence alone, dignified and unbothered, was the ultimate revenge. She showed the court that while you can steal a tiara, you cannot steal the aura of a future queen. The victory, however, wasn't complete until the following morning. The day after the reception, a security detail was dispatched to the Queen Consort's quarters, not to guard her, but to collect. The 3 tiaras, still in their velvet-lined travel cases, were retrieved. This time, the handover was strictly formal. There were no designers present, no casual instructions. The items were logged, checked for damage, and immediately returned to the vault. But William went a step further. In a move that signaled just how deep the breach of trust had gone, he requested a review of the access protocols for the Princess of Wales's assigned collection. Essentially, he wanted the locks changed. The granddaughter rumor was quietly suffocated. The lotus flower tiara, which had been dangerously close to ending up on the head of a non-royal teenager, was placed back in the deepest part of the secure storage. The message had been received. The king might run the country, but William was now guarding the legacy. The borrowing privileges that had existed for decades were effectively revoked. In the weeks that followed, a new normal settled over Buckingham Palace. To the outside world, the Tiara Gate never happened. The press moved on to other stories. But inside, the dynamic had permanently shifted. The relationship between the two households, already fragile, turned into a cold war. Meetings were kept brief. Social overlaps were minimized. The warm, blended family image was maintained only when cameras were rolling. Behind closed doors, the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales operated in separate orbits. Camilla had learned that Kate, often underestimated as the peacekeeper, had a limit, and William had proven that he was willing to burn down the bridge to protect his wife. The staff, caught in the middle, learned quickly to pick a side. You were either Team Cornwall, the King and Queen, or Team Wales, William and Kate. Information stopped flowing freely between the offices. The palace became a house divided, unified only by the crown they both served. As we look back at that week, the image of the Queen Consort standing without a tiara takes on a haunting new meaning. It wasn't about fashion. It wasn't about modernity. It was a scar. It was the visible mark of a family at war with itself, a reminder that in the Game of Thrones, you either win or you go bareheaded. The Princess of Wales kept her dignity, and Prince William kept his promise. But the question remains, how long can this silence hold? The tiaras are back in the vault for now, but the ambition that led to their theft hasn't disappeared. It's just waiting for the next opportunity. And next time, the Queen Consort might not make the mistake of asking first. This is the reality of the modern monarchy, a polished surface hiding a fractured foundation. And if you think this is the end of the story, you haven't been paying attention. In the palace, peace is just the intermission between battles.